So, we all learned today that Gannon Stauch's stepmom was arrested in Myrtle Beach with a charge of first-degree murder, a few other charges, one being child abuse resulting in death, tampering with a deceased body, and tampering of physical evidence. But pay attention to the fact that that charge is first degree. It's not second degree, it's first. That means deliberate, that means premeditated killing, and that means done with malice. This is saying that it wasn't some kind of accident. If she is convicted, she faces life in prison. So if they are thinking of her pleading down, they've certainly set the bar, pretty high for negotiation. So right now she's being held without bail and will be extradited back to Colorado, where the case against her will move on. She can either waive her extradition hearing or go on to a hearing where a judge will look at, how valid that Colorado warrant is. So either she waives it, or if we assume the warrant is valid, which we're pretty certain it is, I think El Paso County has something like 20 days to extradite her, although I really don't think it's going to take that long. The sheriff's office has made it clear to us that they won't be releasing many facts or updates or much information to the public as this all moves forward. I know people are hungry for details, but it's important to understand that the task of bringing justice to Gannon is more easily accomplished if they keep it kind of tight-lipped. I'm just saying, not to be bitter about that. We all have to be patient, and we all just kind of have to trust that they are building a good, solid case. Having said that, I want to go backwards a little bit. One thing I have a hard time shaking off is her interview and the story she shared with reporters about police initially questioning her. I know it was obvious to most of us that she was speaking from a place of defensiveness, a place of deflection and fear. We now know for certain that it was fear of catching charges, but the most concerning thing about that interview to me is how she made sure to bring up her rights being violated by being denied a lawyer, being treated unfairly, and her underage daughter being treated unfairly. It's just my biggest fear in all of this that she was setting up that storyline, that narrative right then and there of a possible defense to be used in the future if they managed to get her on murder charges. I just hope that her story about that is a flat out lie, and if so, that can be proven. I know it would make everybody sick if that were to somehow affect the outcome of this case. Uh, when I think about Letecia and all the lies that she's been so comfortable sharing with the public, it's just hard for me to imagine her being interrogated into telling the truth. Not to mention, if she didn't have an attorney before, she most likely has one now. She just seems to be that kind of person who will always kind of fight and push back against pressure. I have hope and a hunch that someone is involved and has incriminating details, and they have decided to spill it. Whether it's for their own good or for the sake of Gannon, we don't know yet. It is scary in a way that because this has become such a high-profile case, there will be a lot of good lawyers who would be happy to take this on, regardless of her finances. What's most important, though, is that prosecution is able to make a solid case and do what it takes to get the truth out and make sure justice is served. Without having a body, it does make that task of getting her on these charges more difficult, but by no means impossible. I have faith that they will find Gannon before it gets to that point, and I'm going to hold on to that faith that, it just doesn't come to that. So, aside from all that, today's events have me thinking. It was a few days ago when people were noticing the crime unit was back at the Stauch house, gathering evidence of some kind. Of course, this has all made us wonder what they were taking from the house. If I had to guess, and I could be totally wrong, but I would imagine that some of what they were able to gather at the very beginning of this case had to be processed for forensic evidence. So maybe when the results came in, that was able to give investigators some, good information or leads, angles that maybe had them back at the house recently gathering more to support something. they seem confident that they have a crime scene, yet it took a bit of time for it to come to that. I guess what I'm saying is, they didn't walk into the home with blood or evidence strewn everywhere. We don't know if the crime scene is the house or a vehicle. Uh, we're just going. We know that they were at the house very very recently, and that's kind of what we have no choice but to go by. So, aside from that physical evidence, everybody is wondering about potential witnesses, most notably wondering just how Letecia's daughter possibly plays into this. Did she know something and is now telling the truth? It's not quite clear yet. If so, what that means as far as her own possible involvement is also just not clear to us yet. It just feels like someone started talking, though. We all know it wasn't Tisha, just go ask Nancy Grace. I've heard a lot of people saying that Letecia's sister was also arrested in South Carolina today, but I haven't been able to find out if that is 100% solid fact. If so, I think it's an interesting part of the puzzle. Regardless, I'm sure that will be made clear to us one way or the other before too long. At the end of all of this, I think all of our hearts just go to pieces to think about how Landon and Al must feel. At one point, they both loved and cared for Tisha, so for this to happen, it's something that is almost completely incomprehensible. Landon has made it clear that she is a spiritual woman, and I just hope that that can help her with anger because, well, I can't imagine. If you look back to how Tisha was trashing Landon while Gannon was missing and she was responsible for it, that behavior, I mean, which is just a drop in the bucket, with the rest of her disgusting behavior, I just cannot imagine how Gannon's family is dealing and coping with that. May they be blessed with grace and some level of peace and, a bit of comfort. When it comes to Al, I don't know. I hope he can find some kind of peace with the fact that he may have chose to marry this woman and bring them into his life in the lives of his children, but he did not choose her behavior or this outcome. My thoughts are almost consumed with the thoughts of what they've had to deal with during this nightmare. I just can't begin to imagine being in either one of their shoes. On the bright side, it's so heartwarming to see them leaning on each other and coming together for Gannon, and despite these circumstances, I have faith that investigators have enough information to find Gannon and to bring him home. I just want to see that happen for this family as soon as possible. I think of Lena and the kind of future she has ahead of her without her brother, and dealing with this and dealing with that loss, and it's just such a crime. It's a crime. Though children they're resilient, and I don't mean that in a way where she doesn't, or kids don't feel as deeply or that they don't hurt. That's not what I'm saying. It's almost like a bright side of being young. In so many ways, they just adjust easier than adults. I almost think it's by design that children are this way because it wouldn't be fair otherwise when they have so little control or say about what goes on around them in life. Just this poor little girl, this whole family, it's heartbreaking. So that's where we're at, guys. I'm sure you're seeing news everywhere. And we're all just going to kind of sit back and continue to take this in and see how this unfolds. Send all the positivity you can towards this family and continue to hold Gannon in your hearts, and may he come home soon. I just want to thank you guys so much for listening and watching.